Okay, Nixiquad, student Daniko Squalgasi, Anigana Quad. My name is Julian Black Antelope, and I'm from the Buckskin Black Horse family, the Weasel people, and you're listening to Kneel Before Pod.
Kneel Before Blog presents Kneel Before Pod.
Hello and welcome to Kneel Before Pod, the podcast that is trying to get the president to Hulk out. Well, hasn't he already? Who knows? I'm your host Craig, and we're here to discuss the latest cinematic release in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Captain America Brave New World, Marvel's latest apolitical thriller. And joining me for this, I have restarted the Avengers, or have I? Is it important? First up, he is even more indestructible than vibranium. It's Oh, hello.
I'm not so sure about that, Craig. Hello. I have this thing called, I don't know if you've heard of it, morning sickness. It's not because I'm pregnant. I'm not a pregnant person. I simply just have sinus issues in the morning. Indestructible, I do not feel.
Now, how would one be more indestructible than something that is indestructible? There is a question.
Good question. I don't know. I guess it might be something that is spoiled during the movie, which, by the way, I feel like you have spoiled a little bit just there with the introduction, but I suppose the trailers also did that, so never mind.
Yeah, no more than the trailer spoiled. I think we could actually talk about quite a lot in the non-spoiler section on this, but we'll get to that. Also joining for this discussion, she is really hoping for a hookup from the Wakandans. It's Kat.
Yeah, actually, I would love a hookup from the Wakandans. Anything.
Just a pair of shoes that you never have to replace.
Yeah, anything. I would love it. Hello. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I was going to say, as soon as you said, I'm like, but I guess it's on the poster.
It's everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, so what are we protecting? What secrets are we protecting here?
Just the minutiae of what happens in individual scenes, maybe a cameo or two.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things. We'll get to that.
Are there cameos? Oh, there is. Yeah, okay.
You have to think about it a little bit, but yes.
Yes, there is.
Okay. Good start.
Before we get started, it's maybe worthwhile to establish some credentials because, Bo, you've never been on a non-news podcast before, and podcasts like this is actually why I asked you to be a part of my Avengers, I suppose. So we'll start with you. What is your Marvel history? Do you like the Marvel movies? Do you not like the Marvel movies? Do you follow the MCU? And do you like them? And what would be some of your favorites, if you indeed have them?
No, I don't like them. I am forced to watch them against my will. For those that don't know me, I'm a disability support worker, and I have a particular person I work with. Shout out to Matty Z. He's a 33-year-old man with Down syndrome, and he loves movies. And he often drags me to whatever he wants to watch. And on this particular recent stretch, it's been Captain America Brave New World multiple times. And I still can't remember many story beats from it. Yeah, so anyway, I'm not a fan of Marvel for sure. There are some movies that I think are really good. I was talking to my partner, Alex, last night, and she's like, are you prepped for tomorrow? Do you have an angle? I'm like, sort of. And I was thinking about what the best Marvel movies are. And I think of Winter Soldier as one of the best. I think of Infinity War, Endgame being some of the best. I really liked Guardians 1 and 3. I think Guardians 3 might be the only truly good Marvel movies since Endgame. Is that a hot take? And that might tell you what I think about this movie, just a little bit.
I don't know if it's a hot take. I think it's widely regarded as being a cut above. I don't think it's the only good one, but that's just me. I have complicated thoughts. So you're not a Marvel fan as such, but you see them all and give them all a fair go, and you're here to give the perspective of the person that doesn't follow these perhaps as religiously as some.
Yes, but I am literate. I haven't read the comic books or anything, but I have seen the movies. I've seen literally all the movies, and multiple times too. And by the way, Captain America is my favorite. So I was hopeful that this would be more enjoyable than I found it.
And that takes care of your spoiler-free thoughts as well then.
Yeah.
Efficient, thank you. Kat, do you want to reestablish your Marvel credentials? You've been on a few Marvel podcasts, but since Bo did it, you might as well.
I would have called myself a Marvel superfan or an MCU superfan until not that long ago. But I'm afraid that superhero fatigue has set in, or rather mediocre stuff fatigue has set in. I've been watching all the things. Why? I couldn't tell you. Because at this point, it's like, oh my gosh. Especially with the mediocre TV stuff that keeps happening, and then it's required viewing, and then you have to like, yeah, at this point, I don't know that I'm a super fan anymore. Lapsed super fan.
I'm kind of similar, and I actually haven't watched everything. There's things like Echo and What If seasons 2 and 3 that I haven't watched. If you told 10 years ago me that there's Marvel stuff and you don't want to watch it, I'd be like, get out of here. You're nuts. Yeah. But here we are.
I will say, I think Echo in itself is actually pretty good. There's some really interesting stuff in it. That one was not one of the bad ones.
And what were your spoiler-free thoughts on this movie then? I think you've implied.
Spoiler-free thoughts. Here's the soundbite. Cut this up and put it on your social media. I think Sam deserved better as his official foray as Captain America. I think this is a glorified TV movie that has no faith in itself, and they certainly don't have any faith in Sam, and I don't think that's fair. We know he's better than that. We've seen him be better than that. So it's just very, by the numbers, even calling it that, I'm not sure. I think there's a committee to it. Somewhere down the line, I think there was a test screening, and they went, oh no, we didn't like that. And so they reshot and reconfigured stuff. You can tell in some scenes where the CGI is atrocious. And it's like, wow, I can't believe I'm watching this in IMAX and the VFX are so bad and they let this just go out. They just let this go out into the world. I can't believe I paid money.
This is nothing new for Marvel, to be fair.
I feel like there was standards. There used to be. I think there used to be a time, and that was kind of my comment as I was leaving the cinema. There used to be a time that I would leave a Marvel movie and feel pumped, excited. There's heroes, there's stakes, emotional stuff. I would leave and go like, oh man, that was good. And this, I just left and I was tired. Part of it was I wanted to check out the IMAX cinema in my hometown in Greece because we didn't have one when I was growing up, and we do now, and it's great. But, you know what I mean?
I get it. I totally agree. So that's the end of the Neil Before Pod's review of Captain America Brave New World.
Thank you so much for listening. Follow us on social media. Throw us a donation if you feel like it. And 5 stars. Thank you. Goodbye.
Rise against. Rise against.
My disappointment was actually more time delayed than yours was, because I watched the film and I was thinking, yeah, this is fine. It's all right. I'm having a good time. The individual scenes are pretty good. I'm getting on with this just okay. And maybe some of that was to do with some of the horrendous reactions that had appeared before the film. I didn't read them extensively, but you come across things sometimes, and there was a lot of this ain't good vitriol flying around. And then I was, yeah, this was all right. But when I was writing my review, I talked myself down from 3 stars to 2 stars, and it was, this film is not designed for me thinking about it, apparently, because that's what happens when I start thinking about it. And I remember people used to refer to the MCU films as like going to McDonald's, as opposed to going to have a substantial meal at a fancy restaurant for other types of films. And I would usually disagree with that assessment, because I did think there was depth there. I did think there was substance. I did think there was reasons to be invested in what was going on. But I now get what people were saying. I felt like I'd just had a Big Mac, and then an hour later I was hungry.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I felt. I felt empty pretty quickly.
Yep.
So that's where we're at now, which is not great.
You might not have had this over there, but McDonald's actually had exactly what you may have experienced, right? We used to have a situation over here where you could create your own burger, and it was a little bit fancy. And they had Angus beef, and they had brioche buns, and they came out on these little wood blocks. So it was reasonable to take your date to a McDonald's. Maybe not reasonable, but if you were like 18 or 19, you could do it. And then if someone sat there and said, well, Marvel's just like fast food, you'd be like, yeah, but the McDonald's version, where it's a little bit fancy. But then, Craig, they took it away. And now I'm left with nothing but Quarter Pounders and Big Macs. And it's the Marvel arc. It's what's happened in the MCU. They took away the create your own menu at McDonald's. It's no longer a little bit fancy. Where are the wooden blocks, Craig? That's what I want to know. They're gone.
We never had that in the UK, not to my recollection anyway.
I recollect very well. As I said, I'm not a Marvel fan, but before and up to Endgame, there was some good stuff there. And now it just feels like I could watch these movies multiple times and I just nothing them. I less than nothing them, which might be worse. And I spoke about my client, Matty Z. He's the kind of guy that if you take him to a theme park movie, you give him some popcorn and you sit him down in front of a theme park movie, like a Marvel movie, he's going to clap along and cheer and stuff like that. We have to sit away from people to not disturb them because he goes for it. And these movies, even though he wanted to see them multiple times, this particular movie, basically no reaction. It's just nothing's it. He loves the Hulk. He loves Captain America. He'll see the American flag and he'll just salute it and be like, America, because he loves Captain America so much. But he basically nothing to this movie, as he took me to see it 3 times. So I think that's also saying something. It's lost the fun that it used to have. It's lost the depth that it used to have. And I can't access either of those things, and I just get left with nothing.
Yeah, it's reasonable to say.
Yeah.
Okay, shall we hulk into spoilers then, and then dig deep into this empty fast food experience?
Let's do it.
Yeah, side of fries.
I'm going to start by pointing out to people that even though this film really doesn't, we might get political as we're discussing it. So if you don't like politics in your media, then, well, you're delusional because politics is in the media. But if you don't like explicit discussion of those politics in your media, then perhaps check out of this podcast now because we're probably going to get into it.
Yeah.
You have been warned. But thanks for listening up until this point where we didn't get political. Or did we? Maybe they're annoyed at us. Who knows? Anyway, let's start with Sam. Sam Wilson, the new Captain America, the current Captain America. He was once Falcon. He is now Captain America. If you want to understand a bit more of that, watch the TV show, which we'll get to whether that's necessary or not. Kat, you said earlier that you think Sam deserved better. So can you go into a bit why that is? Why you think he deserved better as his inaugural cinematic appearance as Captain America?
Sure. I think first and foremost, Sam was a great side character for Steve to bounce off of. And I think he brings a lot to the table as a veteran, someone who's fought. Also, he's not a superhero. He's just some guy. And yeah, sure, he's fit and he has a suit and gizmos. But the fact that here is this guy who embodies the ideals of a more modern America, because Steve came from the past, right? And as much as he moved with the times when he got unfrozen and really got to see where America has ended up, because it wasn't the America that he left, I think Sam is a better picture of what America is now. He's hardworking. He's a family person, a fighter. He doesn't quit ever. And I would have loved to see a Winter Soldier-esque film with Sam as Captain America. I was really looking forward to something like that. I will say that his show, Falcon and Winter Soldier, which a lot of people don't love, I thought it was pretty good. And if anything, the disservice was done by having that be his main thing. And then the movie was an afterthought. And they're paying for that now because it's a total flop. And people are like, the heck was this? It's because you put all the juicy bits in the show. And he's just relegated now, like a bad football team. Except he isn't a bad football team. It's just not fair.
Yeah, the worst thing they could decide on the back of this is, oh no, Sam doesn't work as Captain America. Make Bucky Captain America instead or something.
Or something, yeah.
We've seen a history of learning the wrong lessons from such things, so that is very possible. But you're right, the TV show does have an arc. One of the agenda points I put here is, does he have an arc in this film? And I would argue that he doesn't. I feel like he's more secondary in his own film because the film is more about Ross than it is him. And
Yeah.
you could argue that Steve didn't really have an arc in Winter Soldier because he already knew what he was trying to do. He already understood exactly what he needed to do. But that was kind of the point of that movie. It's the world's wrong and I need to fix it. And he was in no doubt about it. But Sam's different. And it's in the trailer more than it is in the movie. The "You're not Steve Rogers, I'm not trying to be" exchange. You still get the "You're not Steve Rogers," but Sam doesn't say anything about it in the actual final cut of the movie. It's very much on brand for this film, trying to avoid saying anything about anything, which is really frustrating. But I agree, it was a disservice for Sam as Cap. And I think this could have built on the TV show. I've always said that if you watch this movie and you've never watched the show and you watch Endgame, you can sort of put the pieces together, as in he gets the shield in Endgame and now he's Captain America. You have this in-between bit that you can take or leave, at least in theory. And Bo, you'll be instrumental in figuring out whether you felt like you missed anything, because we don't have that context or lack of context. So you could have a different arc for him as Captain America in this movie after he's gone through an arc in the show. But like I said, he doesn't really have one. He just sort of reacts to whatever's going on. And it doesn't help that because they put the Red Hulk in the trailer, we're ahead of him as a character because we know what's coming and we're just waiting for him to figure it out. It's actually kind of frustrating because you can see the pieces and it's like, oh, those pills, that must turn him in the Hulk and all that stuff. And he's just meandering along, not really having any idea what's going on. It's kind of frustrating. Like I said, Bo, you haven't seen the TV show, I assume, the one on Disney Plus, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Do you feel like you missed out by not seeing it, or do you feel like you were able to follow just fine? There's a couple of major elements in this movie that are from that show, but I'm wondering if they just made sense by themselves.
I assume Isaiah, particularly.
Yeah.
Being one of those things.
Torres being the other one.
Okay. It didn't matter that much. I think the movie does okay at explaining who these people are, relatively speaking. I'd have no build-up of relationship between Sam and those characters. So that context is missing, but it didn't bother me that much because I don't think the film was going to be much good anyway. I did watch an episode or two of Falcon and the Winter Soldier because Daniel Bruhl was in it. And I thought, oh, cool, Zemo, I'm interested. And then he just was completely different to Civil War. And I was like, okay, I'm out.
But dancing Daniel Bruhl, though.
I'm not even sure if I got that far. I might have. They're at some sort of club or something?
Yes, in that makeshift, not Singapore, but Singapore.
Yeah.
Their fake Singapore town.
Madripoor.
Yes, thank you. Anything that Daniel Bruhl is in is an instant yes for me.
Yeah.
But that's because I'm a fangirl.
Usually the same for me. I'm also a fangirl. He didn't do enough to save that one for me. I didn't finish it. I find some of the comments curious. I want to respond to a couple of things. One, Kat, you mentioned that you wanted a Winter Soldier-esque experience. And I guess what you mean by that is standard or quality, because what we did get was a Winter Soldier-esque experience in terms of what it was trying to do, I guess, which was similar story beats and things like that, right? Or the similar kind of story they're trying to tell, which is more political, more earth grounded. You know what I mean? So to me, it invited that comparison, which is dangerous because Winter Soldier is very good. And then you're left with something that is that. And on Winter Soldier, Craig, you mentioned that you think that Steve didn't have so much of an arc in Winter Soldier. I guess I would just slightly challenge that.
I disagree.
I would challenge that because Steve had a loyalty to the American government that is torn apart by that film. This is during the Obama era because he realizes that the people that present themselves as allies or good people and politicians for the greater good are actually agents of evil. And what we end up with in this film, yes, I agree that Sam doesn't have much of an arc in this one. It's more Harrison Ford's story, is kind of the opposite. It's, oh, Thaddeus, he's a bad dude, right? We don't like Thaddeus. And then, oh, can we trust Thaddeus? I guess we kind of can. He's kind of all right. Let's just work together, guys. And this is during the Trump era. So the political messaging is just completely turned on its head. And I feel like Winter Soldier just did it better. I think Steve did have an arc where he had to learn things about, obviously, Bucky and his split loyalties between America and his instincts and his righteous, greater good instincts. Whereas this film, I just feel like it didn't challenge Sam in the same way. And I found it very uninteresting.
No, it doesn't. And it's interesting you say it's this film. It was released during the Trump era, but it was conceived during the Biden era. And I do think that we're actually going to see this a lot in films for a while, films that were in production during Joe Biden's term as president. I've noticed it in Mickey 17 as well when I went to see that. But it's this idea of, that was a weird time. I'm glad that's over now. And you definitely get that sense with Ross. We had this weird period where the president turned out to be a Hulk, but it's over now and we'll be on to something else.
And we'll never talk about it again.
The film ends with Ross is no longer president, but doesn't tell you who is. Who was his vice president? That's not seen here at all. Actually, I do have a bit in my notes about MCU presidents that might be fun to dig into. It's a weird minefield of stuff that I ended up looking up. So I do think that we will get a lot of films over the next year or so maybe that will be Biden era remnants, I guess. As in, things will never be this bad again. No, God, they're worse. That's the next part of that development process, isn't it? Things were bad, and then they were slightly better, and now they're even worse.
Yeah. I read this great review, I guess you would call it. It was written almost as a primer. The author of this is a science fiction author I know, and he said, read this before you see the movie and tell me if that doesn't help you kind of contextualize things. Because a lot of people were worried about the political context of this film ringing hollow or feeling off kilter because of where we are now. And to an extent it does. I don't think that that's something that you can avoid when America is very much going through the fascist circles right now, and Ross is at best Biden-esque, at best. And so, yeah, there is kind of a feeling of, to me anyway, walking into the cinema and seeing all of these military structures and government institutions, that kind of means nothing now. Everything's falling apart. Everyone's getting fired. The CIA is being attacked from within. And none of this matters, kind of. Watching anything in which the American system is the good guys, I can't picture it, quite frankly, in the current climate. And so going into this movie, I'm like, I don't know what I'm expecting. But what the article was kind of trying to make a point about, Stuart Hotston, who wrote this, said, actually, it's not as off-kilter as you might think, because what it tries to do is it tries to emphasize the importance of listening to each other and allowing people to overcome past transgressions and allowing growth and being able to have a conversation and say, hey, yes, you're trying to do better. Let's trust in each other that that's true. And it is a message that I think it's in there. It is, but it's watered down and it's kind of like a really weak juice. It's just the essence of juice, but there's not really substance to it. And while, yeah, it is a message that is important right now, I don't know, the implication is that someone like Ross could make horrific mistakes and look back at that and say, oh no, those were horrific mistakes. I'm sorry. And the fact of the matter is, the people in power right now have made horrific choices and they are not sorry about them. And they're making them every day as we speak right now. I don't even know when this is going out. I'm sure things are worse than when we recorded it. And it rings hollow because of that juxtaposition, unfortunately. I know that they were trying to be like, hey, both sides, let's listen to each other. But there is, in fact, in real life, something to be said about allowing growth from people who have made mistakes. But it does predicate itself on that person wanting to change anyway in the first place. And I just have a hard time seeing that in this moment. So I did read that article and I went in thinking, okay, let's see how I feel. And I came out of it thinking, yeah, I guess. I think Stu was being a little optimistic there.
It's very optimistic.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
Probably written in a different time, as in 3 weeks ago or whatever.
Yeah, truly. Every day counts now.
A different era. We couldn't believe how lucky we were to only be in that era 3 weeks ago. Who knows what's happened in the 3 weeks since we record this?
Yeah, as we record on the 11th of March, Sam Wilson simply would not exist as Captain America.
He would have been fired, yeah, by Doge.
He's a DEI hire. They would have looked at him and gone, oh, that's wasteful spending on a black person, and probably shot him, I guess. I don't know. Because that's the world we live in. To put my colours to the mast, I am a proper leftist. I don't like Biden either.
Yeah.
More left than Bernie kind of vibes.
Problem is, in America, you really have no choice, do you? If you lead in that direction,
exactly.
you have one person to vote for, and that's you.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard. So I'm not saying Biden's the hero or necessarily or whatever, but even during the Biden administration, there was a really interesting conversation to be had about, let's acknowledge the fact I'm a white person, but Sam Wilson is not. He's not a white person. He's a black Captain America. And that's interesting. Mm-hmm. There's an interesting story in there. We've got a black director who is making this movie. It's his big chance, big budget breakthrough. And there's an interesting conversation about Sam Wilson's heritage and ethnicity in line with what he's trying to achieve for his country and how his country these days, right now, would absolutely turn their back on him without question. And I guess I'm falling into the trap of wishing the film was something that it wasn't kind of vibe, but I am wishing that. It's a movie for 10-year-olds, right? But I wish they did something with that because I don't want 10-year-olds to be coming out of this movie being like, you know what? All we need to do is just trust that the president knows what they're doing because the president does not. Elon Musk does not. They don't have your best interest at heart, kid. Learn the hard way. It's saying nothing interesting. And at the very least, they could have gone with, hey, being a black person is hard. And I just feel like they largely avoid it except for the Isaiah stuff a bit.
Yeah. where it was, oh yeah, I was put in prison and experimented on, but that was the 70s or whatever. That's not now. Sam even makes that argument. He tells him that was then, this is now. Now you're a guest at the White House. Things are better. And then obviously we live in the world we live in. But one thing that the film fails to explain adequately to me as well is, how is Sam affiliated with the government as Captain America? I didn't understand that relationship. So he's doing stuff for the government, but he's not formally affiliated with them. I didn't understand what the organizational relationship was. And then going back to the TV show as well, that show ended with, look, your Captain America was a bust. I'm just going to do it, and there's nothing you can do about it. And now he's going to the White House and retrieving adamantium for the president and all this stuff. I was confused. I just didn't understand how that worked. And the film wasn't interested in telling me. It was too busy doing ageist jokes about Isaiah Bradley. Well, you're old and can't use a phone. Hilarious. Let's do that joke 4 times.
To be fair, though, Craig, old people, they can't use phones.
I know. They told me 4 times.
Do you get it, though?
I get it.
I tend to agree. To Kat's larger point during the spoiler-free time, he'd probably deserve better. And what I end up with is this really yuck feeling that I like Sam Wilson a lot less than Steve Rogers as Captain America. I know how that looks as a white guy, and I know that there are plenty of white dudes that feel that way because he's black. I feel that way because they had a chance to tell an interesting story and refused to. And Steve Rogers had a bunch of interesting stories.
You feel that way because Steve was in better movies, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. This is without question the worst Captain America movie. Not even close.
Yeah, I agree. And in terms of Ross as a president, we do often come up with our own version of the movie here on Kneel Before Pod, so don't worry about that. we have done. If you want to listen to myself and Aaron discussing Ant-Man Quantumania, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, should I say.
Oh, God.
We came up with 3 different better films that film could have been. Instead, it's none of them. But there's elements of all of them in there, but it could have expanded on any of them, made a better film. Anyway, my better film would have been Ross as a much more antagonistic figure rather than trying to make him a sympathetic one. Because any time he's shown up in the MCU before this point, he has been antagonistic. He's the villain in The Incredible Hulk, or one of them. He is antagonistic in Civil War, as in, we don't want this guy controlling our Avengers. He's in Black Widow for one scene, isn't he? Same with Infinity War.
I'll take your word for it.
I'm pretty sure he's in Black Widow for one scene. But this is when he was played by William Hurt, who is unfortunately no longer with us, so couldn't reprise his role for this. Although, I feel like they would have recast him anyway if he was going to be in this size of a role. I just get that sense.
Maybe. He's a pretty big actor. Not like Harrison Ford big. You reckon they would have recast him? I'm not sure.
Maybe. I'm just going to make that suggestion. People can mull it over. If you think about the Winter Soldier copying that they're doing here, you have Harrison Ford and Jack Ryan movies and things like that, so they're trying to get the whole political legitimacy in there, just like they did with Robert Redford in Winter Soldier. I think there would have been some kind of attempt to recast him and get Harrison Ford to do it, especially because Harrison Ford just asked, can I get a Marvel role, apparently, because he hears about good actors having a lot of fun and he wants to be in on that.
I'm sure it was also the paycheck.
Oh yeah, the paycheck will be significant.
Yeah.
Imagine having that clout as an actor where you just call up a studio and say, can I be in one of your movies? My asking price is this much, by the way. And then they just say, yeah.
And they go, yeah, sure.
We'll find something for you to do. You want to be the president again?
You're Harrison Ford? Yeah, okay.
It's only Star Wars I don't like. I won't badmouth any of your stuff. If I was making this movie, I shouldn't be the one to make this movie, but if I was, I would have maybe made Ross more of an antagonist. And they do set up this antagonistic connection between Cap and Ross, because yeah, he hunted us for years, but yeah, it's fine now. He's not doing it now, so we're okay here. And he said he wants to reform the Avengers, whatever that means. And oh yeah, his daughter's not speaking to him, and we're supposed to be upset about that. Because remember that thing that happened 17 years ago? I mean, I do, because I quite like The Incredible Hulk, but it's not really continuity that anybody cares about. And actually, the opening 10 minutes of this movie was some of the clumsiest setup for a film I've seen in recent memory. The whole previously on The Incredible Hulk section, just so epically clumsy. This news report that was, here's what happened in The Incredible Hulk, in case you either haven't seen it or don't remember, because we've been trying to ignore that film for 17 years almost. So Ross as an antagonist, does anybody else think he would be better as a flat out antagonist rather than the I'm trying to change thing that he ended up being? Bo, start with you.
Do I think he would have been more interesting if he was more interesting?
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
The thing is, I felt like he had the only compelling emotional arc in the whole film. And you don't often see someone who's made mistakes, who's hunted down people who were later venerated as heroes. He was the antagonist for a lot of the Avengers stuff because he was always in the way. So it's interesting from the narrative perspective to have this guy be like, yeah, you know what? I was wrong. And nobody believes me. Nobody believes that I think that I was wrong. That is interesting, except everything else isn't. And I guess we'll get to that point where we talk about how this is basically a soft sequel to The Incredible Hulk. This is not a Captain America movie. This is a Hulk movie. I made a YouTube video a long time ago when I was still making YouTube videos where I talk about how I really dislike The Incredible Hulk because there is no narrative up. Everything is a downer all the time. There's no fun in this movie. It's just depressing and sad, and he's getting hunted, and it's all unfair, and it never lets up, not even a little bit. And so it's just such an unpleasant viewing experience for me that I think I've watched it exactly twice. The first time, hated it, and then the second time in order to make that YouTube video. And then I was like, I think I'm fine never watching this again. Now, who thought at Marvel that we wanted a sequel to this? My God, you recast him and gave the character new life. We're over it. But no, let's bring things back to 25 movies ago.
More.
Plus however many TV shows. Who thought that this was a good idea? And even more so, not to market it as such. To just be like, this is a Sam Wilson story. No, it's not. You're stealing his movie from him by making this a Hulk movie that Hulk isn't even in.
Yes.
There's a shallow continuity checklist. It's because some people have been talking about these things on the internet ever since. Well, did Ross and his daughter ever reconcile? I like The Incredible Hulk, and I never cared if that would happen or not. And then it's what happened to Samuel Stearns, aka the leader. And yeah, I was kind of wondering what was happening there, I suppose. But also, I'd have been okay without it, or I'd rather it was in a Hulk movie because it's the strongest man alive versus the smartest man alive, effectively. That's the Hulk leader contrast. Yeah. And well, it's not that Hulk wants his intelligence, but the leader wants his brawn, wants to harness that for himself. And it's another classic situation of we're going to write a genius level villain, but we're not geniuses, so we don't know how to write a genius level villain, or we don't know how to write a smart enough story that will accommodate that character. In fact, the leader is terrible in this. He keeps talking about these probabilities and they're always wrong. There was an 80% chance you would turn around. Well, you got that wrong, didn't you? Massively wrong.
And did not account for the 20%?
I thought there'd be war in the Indian Ocean. Yeah, well, you missed the mark on that one as well. Are you really the smartest villain alive or not?
He did manage to predict that someone would receive a phone call at this exact moment so that he could execute them, though.
Is it because he made the phone call?
To Kat's point about this is a sequel to the Hulk without the Hulk in it, which is just baffling. So I said that I've seen every Marvel movie. I have not seen The Incredible Hulk because when I was about to watch Infinity War Endgame, I did the whole series on Disney and then I have seen everything since. I did not see The Incredible Hulk. You know why? Because not even Marvel wanted me to see The Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, they disavowed it.
Yeah, Edward Norton, gone. Who cares? What's going on there? Who cares? No one cares. They did that little bit at the start of Avengers to introduce Bruce Banner. That's enough for me. That's all I needed. Cool. All right. Now away we go. And then you have a sequel 17 years later without the Hulk in it. It's just nuts. It's so bad. What are we doing here? To use my catchphrase that I use on this show quite a bit. It is terrible. As to your question about whether Ross would be more compelling, I agree that he is the center of this film. I agree that he has the arc. But what I have absolutely no patience for is the idea that this bad man does bad man things his whole bad man life, and then he bad mans his way into the presidency. His own daughter is still not talking to him. He's had an inauguration and everything, and his daughter is still not talking to him. And then he's like, oh, geez, guys, shucks, I'm a nice guy now. Believe me, will you?
Did Betty call? No, just like every other day for the last 17 years, she didn't call, okay?
Oh, shucks, man, I'm just the president. I'm having a tough time. Come on, man. What are we doing here?
Well, I was actually thinking about, again, this other film where Ross is more of a villainous presence than he is here, and thinking about it in the context of the modern or the current Trump presidency. You even have that almost assassination, or it turns out to be a faked assassination, but that really happened recently. And it's just interesting that the film didn't predict it, but it just so happened to coincide with something that happened in reality. And then obviously you have him Hulk out in the White House, so effectively, he could have shown his true colours. And then, again, if this film was wanting to say anything, you could see the American public actually rallying behind this in the same way that they rally behind some of the nonsense that Trump gets up to. You could imagine his next campaign slogan is, "We have a Hulk," and then he gets reelected or something. That would have at least been something.
Yeah, but instead, as soon as the president starts to hulk out from stress, the Secret Service opens fire on the president. Relentlessly, a hail of bullets at the president at a presidential press conference in front of the White House. What are we doing here? What is going on?
Could you imagine the Trump analog of, I can turn into Hulk, I can single-handedly save America and all this? You could just imagine a populist leaning into that.
They say I'm the greatest Hulk. I'm the best Hulk. They said there was no better Hulk than me. That's exactly what he would do.
Even steal Stark's phrase, "We have a Hulk." Could use that.
Oh, God.
Instead of nothing, that would have been something.
I agree. A lot of the reviews that I've read are, as Ross, Harrison Ford was doing a good job. He actually tried.
He did.
And I tend to agree with that, but it's not enough to save the character for me. There's nothing interesting happening for me. I tend to agree with Kat that it's probably the most compelling thing that's happening in this movie, but that's a low bar.
Yeah. Well, his reform the Avengers line, as it ended up being, that confused me because it was in the trailer as well. So it just seemed like this is going to be a big part of this film. Maybe Sam will bring together a new team of Avengers and we'll do a bit of Winter Soldier and Civil War in one kind of thing. But they just mention it there and then they drop it until the end of the film where he says to Torres, "We're going to bring back the Avengers," and it's going to have 2 Birdmen on it. So that'll be some nice variety for people, won't it? 2 flying guys with bird costumes, effectively. You have the bit where Ross says, "I want to restart the Avengers." And then Sam says something like, "What happens if I want to go somewhere that you don't want me to go?" And he says, "We'll figure it out." And then that's the end of the conversation. We made a movie about this once.
It was good too.
What happens if we disagree? We're just going to dismiss it in one line. "We'll figure it out." And it doesn't sound like you will. It doesn't sound like you've thought about this at all.
Yeah, we'll talk it out. Oh, okay.
Sign me up.
President that I don't trust? Let's do that. Far out.
And the adamantium thing, I was also confused about this. It's something I used to praise Marvel for was the world building. Between films, you'd have things that would get picked up and build on itself, and you would get an ongoing story out of something like that. But you've got this adamantium mass, and they call it the Celestial Mass. So one of my first questions is, how does the President of America know it's a Celestial? I thought nobody except the Eternals knew that. Did they tell him? How does he know this thing? Also, there's 3 countries involved in this treaty. You've got India, you've got France, and you've got Japan. Where's everyone else? What about China, Russia, Wakanda? Does nobody else in the world have anything to say about this abundance of resources that have cropped up functionally overnight?
Djibouti, New Zealand, Tahiti, where are they? That's what I want to know.
Where's anybody? It's just these 3 countries. We're the only people that are interested in this. And we're going to do something with this material. What do you want to use it for? It's not a good MacGuffin when you don't explain what it's for. It's just this precious material that might be better than vibranium at doing stuff. Also, if it's indestructible, how do you plan to mine it? You're not explaining anything to me.
Yeah, and how did they mine it?
Yeah. Using vibranium, maybe? I don't know.
Skill and courage, I think, was the official. They just had skill and courage and just mined it.
Those were the 2 tools. This is my pickaxe skill and my hammer courage. Also, I have to express my disappointment that nothing in the MCU so far, no TV show, no nothing, has acknowledged the fact that there is a celestial hand and head just poking out. There's been no continuity with that whatsoever. And the one movie to do this is this piece of garbage. Because I am the only person, definitely on this podcast team, but probably also generally, who really liked the Eternals.
I thought it was fine.
Yeah.
It gets really bad flack for no real reason. I think people just love to dunk on it. And because it got so shafted afterwards, it's just been largely ignored. This whole time I've been like, hello, is anybody going to talk about this? No? No one? Oh, wait, Captain America is here. Great. Even more reason for people to dunk on the Eternals. And I'm just like, Come on, man.
There was a newspaper article in She-Hulk as well, or a website or something. It was there on screen. But that's not substantial.
Oh, sure. I don't remember She-Hulk. I think I might have said this on the podcast that we did on it. I'm going to forget about it immediately. And I have. I genuinely do not remember any details, and I don't feel like I need to rewatch this ever. Maybe if there's another season, which I think is unlikely.
That's a little Easter egg for the Kneel Before Pod heads. If they listen back to She-Hulk, they got a follow through on Kat's forgetting stuff.
Yeah, just Kat being like, I will forget about this immediately after we finish this podcast. Cute now. I have forgotten about this.
So again, it's that internet checklist, isn't it? It's the things that people talk about in these listicles all the time. The top 10 things the MCU has abandoned, and this would usually be high on that list, I imagine. I don't read these listicles.
Gotta be number one.
I don't read them because I don't have time in my life to read the same repetitive information on 15 websites.
Yeah.
So yeah, they check it off the continuity checklist, but they do nothing with it. It's just there, and nations are fighting over it, but only 4 of them.
It does check out that you would have some large nations making decisions for the entire planet. We have that in the real world, but it does seem weird. I think the MCU's ambivalence towards the Celestials sticking out of the freaking Earth is kind of indicative of where we're at with the MCU for me. And one of the biggest problems with the MCU is that they've done so many ridiculous things. We're talking about alien invasions of New York. We're talking about people being snapped into non-existence, like half the universe. We're talking about Celestials growing in our planet and trying to emerge to destroy it. So many utterly unfathomable things. So when we have a Celestial in the ocean, it's less weird than getting snapped out of existence, I guess. So no one cares? I don't know. It reduces stakes is, I guess, my problem. It should have felt like a big deal that adamantium was getting introduced into this universe. And it just felt like an absolute nothing burger.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head, or one of the nails on the head in that respect. The idea that there is no sense of cohesion within the MCU anymore. And it's possibly that it's gotten too big and unwieldy for them to care about continuity in the same way or keep a track of it. But I feel like it's sort of laughing at my investment in these things, because I'll be listening for these little things and waiting for them to be picked up later on and stuff. And how many post-credit scenes have we had since Endgame that have gone nowhere? You have Shang-Chi's rings, for example. So they're set off a signal, someone's coming, still don't know who. You have these characters that have appeared, been liked, and just never seen again. Shang-Chi, for example. And yeah, the Eternals, where are they? There's a tease of they're going to be doing something else. No idea. But I just feel like the people running the show aren't interested in rewarding my investment. And then it contributes to me just feeling empty watching something like this, because I know that none of it matters. In fact, the film ends on that note, actually, where it's, yeah, the White House and Washington Monument were trashed, but don't worry, we're fixing them. And they'll be back to normal in no time. So it's just the idea of this will just wash over you, won't matter. Next film, everything will be back to normal. Comics do that all the time, which is kind of an accepted thing in comics. But when you've had however many films it was up until Endgame, having a bit of a through line and things picking up on other things and all these different threads going in different directions, you expect that to be something that they'll keep doing. And then when they just don't do it, it's really annoying, because you watch any of these films and you think, none of this matters because it's not going anywhere. Where's Doctor Strange? He's off in the dark dimension or something. Who cares? Are we ever going to see him again? And this film is full of that. It's just a real sense that they've hit the reset button at the end of it and we're not going to really bother about any of this ever again.
Yeah. One thing that you did tease was that there would be a cameo in this movie. And it's one of the most frustrating parts of the movie for me. I heard our mutual friend Violet talking about this with Sam Stokes on Real Talk on the Film Stories podcast network. Shout out to Violet. I know she's listening. And she mentioned it was her favorite scene of the movie where Bucky Barnes turns up and he gives this really emotional, cheer up, motivational speech to Sam. That's a really emotional scene, and wow, weird. What a great scene. Sorry, Violet. Totally disagree, because two things happened during that scene. One, yeah, it was kind of like, okay, cool. He's speaking the themes of the movie to Sam. That's nice. And then they undercut it immediately with silly Marvel humor. You had a scriptwriter write that, didn't you? Yeah, I did. Yeah. You like it? Lose me with that. And the second thing is, why isn't Bucky helping? He's in the movie. Why isn't he helping?
Because I guess he's running for office.
Yeah, that came out of nowhere.
Which is also really weird. What the hell?
I assume that was in the TV show.
No.
I don't recall anything about this, and there was nothing mentioned earlier in the film. And so I was genuinely like, Bucky is running for office? It's really strange for this character to want to do this.
Oh, God.
Why does he have speechwriters, and why is there a campaign trail? Please explain to me how this makes sense for him. Maybe this is a lead up to something that's going on in Thunderbolts? I don't know what they're planning for that one. The trailer looked fun, but I don't know.
Yeah, and if you watch the Thunderbolts trailer, knowing that about Bucky, you see him sitting in a courtroom or something. He's wearing an America pin, as politicians tend to do. So there's that. There's the Congressman Bucky Barnes thing. That was a confusing thing to learn. And, okay, I've got to go and do a campaign thing. Mate, there's going to be a Hulk in 10 minutes. Do you want help? Sam doesn't know that, but we, as the audience, know that there's roughly 20 minutes left of the movie, and we haven't seen the Hulk yet. So therefore, there's going to be a Hulk soon. Because we saw it in the trailer. It was in our Happy Meal that we had before the movie or whatever, the toys.
So he's a prospective politician and super soldier who does not want to help the Indian Ocean adamantium celestial situation, the diplomacy between two major countries and other countries. And then you throw in the fact that where's Doctor Strange? Where's the Hulk in his own sequel? I understand the actual context. The actual reason is that this film cost something like $400 million when you count everything. And it's like, we can't afford Benedict Cumberbatch, Oscar nominee, Mark Ruffalo, Oscar nominee. We can't afford all these actors, so they just don't exist in this universe. But the problem is, when I'm watching the film, it just takes me out, because I'm like, why wouldn't Bucky help? Sebastian Stan, Oscar nominee. Why wouldn't Mark Ruffalo be there? What are we doing here?
Yeah. When Stearns is brought up, that's the point where Sam could be like, I know a guy, and he gets Banner involved, because he's dealt with him. Maybe they never had that conversation, though, because I haven't seen this guy in 17 years, forgot he existed. Thought he died, honestly. Probably is what Banner's thinking. Although I feel like Banner would follow up on that. He's a smart guy. I'm going to check that the guy that was experimenting with my blood isn't still doing that. Going to make sure.
But he's out of contract, see, so we can't. Come on now.
He's going to be in the Fantastic Four movie with Miles Teller.
Well, he's back in then. Oh, wow. Fun.
Well, no, he was in one of the lesser offshoots of Marvel movies back when they did that Fantastic Four movie, also known as Fant Four Stick.
Oh, you mean Fan Four Stick?
Yeah, he's not going to be in the next one, at least not as far as I know.
Okay. Well, you mentioned Samuel Stearns there. I have no relationship to him, not seeing Incredible Hulk. I'm familiar with Leader from playing Marvel's Snap on my phone. Quite a handy character.
High intelligence, perhaps?
Yeah, he copies the card that the other player has played onto your own side as well, so it's pretty handy. Anyway, that was, again, a bit of a nothing burger of a villain. And I've heard people complimenting the makeup work, the green head with the bubbles and stuff. And I'm like, that's not convincing to me at all. I didn't think that was good makeup work. And people are complimenting Tim Blake Nelson's performance. And I'm like, why? I don't get it. I don't know if you guys do.
And his plan is to get President Ross to Hulk out in front of everybody? Why does he want to do that?
Yeah.
It's not really explained.
It's the problem with having a character be quote unquote a genius. If someone is so super smart, they are literally smarter than the writer who's inventing them. And that can be difficult to achieve. How do you write someone who's smarter than you when you can't come up with the things that they'd come up with? It's the pitfall of writing a genius character, because it's often just unexplainable and unexplained series of actions. They make no sense to us mortals, but don't worry, he's so smart. It's just because you're dumb and you don't get it. But really, there is no calculation through which they've arrived at this. It's just, what if he does this? Wow! But there's no forethought from the writer's perspective, and especially in a movie like this where, as we've discussed, there's a lot wrong with its internal logic. I don't have the faith that anybody sat down for any amount of time to figure out what would make this guy super smart. They were just like, I don't know, this, I guess, shrug.
It's the Jesse Eisenberg Lex Luthor thing, isn't it? Here's my 24-point scheme, where all these random events have to go exactly the way that I planned in order for this plan to work. And then but what if one of those fell over? And like I said earlier, Stern's plans are always falling over.
With no backup plan.
I predicted that when I put Isaiah in danger, you would turn round. Nope, you got that wrong.
Yeah, shucks, now I'm here with my pants down.
Now I have to turn myself in because I'm so bad at planning.
And that does nothing.
Yeah.
That does absolutely nothing. Why did he turn himself in? I suppose we'll find out in the sequel.
I don't know. The Joker did it 15 years ago, so I'm going to give it a try. Also, Loki did that 13 years ago or whatever. Bad guys want to be caught. That's the trend.
Yeah, it was cool when Kevin Spacey did it in Seven. Kat, you make a great point. I love that you bring that up, is the idea that his meant to be smarter than the writers, but the writers are not smart enough to keep up. I was talking to Ian Buckley about this on my show, Academy Watch. We talk about the Brutalist, and they're talking about a genius architect who is a fictional character. And it's like, well, to sell that he's a genius architect, you actually need the production designer to be amazing. And that's why I like the production design of that movie. Or a genius fictional musician can't be writing bad songs. And then you have, in this situation, you've got 5 writers trying to write a genius villain, and they have fallen on their ass. They have not done a good job.
I think skilled writers are able to get around that limitation by having a smart script that supports the genius character, which just isn't going to happen here.
Yeah, this ain't it.
Where you have 5 writers that haven't checked each other's work, I assume. But that's kind of par for the course for these movies at the moment, where they just throw things at them and then hope it comes together in the edit somehow, and then it just doesn't. You have things like Giancarlo Esposito's character that is a reshoot character. He's only there in reshoots. And also, he's not a big snake man. He's supposed to be a big snake man. I was annoyed at that.
I don't know much about Sidewinder from the comics or even from Marvel Snap.
Big snake man. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, okay. Well, I didn't see a single snake. Was there like a logo on his shirt or something?
There was a logo, yeah. And for some reason, he runs an organization called Serpent, and they all have snake names. And there's even characters that were cut from that. Rosa Salazar was supposed to be in the movie, but she was cut.
Is that the lady that was in that Robot Girl movie? What's that called?
Alita Battle Angel?
Alita. Is that her?
No.
No? Okay.
I don't think so. Wait, I'll have to look this up. Hang on.
No, I think it is.
Rosa Salazar?
Yes. That was a random get.
She isn't in this film, though.
No, she was supposed to be, though. They shot scenes with her in it and then cut them.
Interesting. As who?
Diamondback, I think the character's name was. She was one of the Serpent Society.
She's very handy in Marvel Snap. I can confirm.
It was one of those things that was revealed in Funko Pops or something. You know how you get major plot details from Funko Pops these days?
Oh, yeah.
I think it was one of those. The Serpent Society Funko Pops were announced, and then, well, she's not in the movie, so that's that. And instead you get him and you get the other guy who Sam fights at the beginning, who has an adamantium blade and scratches his suit, but it doesn't tell you it's an adamantium blade.
You know what sentence would have made no sense 20 years ago? You know how you get plot details from Funko Pops?
We truly live in the worst timeline.
Like, wow.
Although, to be fair, you had the Age of Ultron toy set that had Captain America on the bike instead of Black Widow.
I can see that annoying people.
Yeah, well, it was annoying because you couldn't get any merchandise of Black Widow from any of the movies.
Yeah.
So Captain America rides a motorbike to save himself from fighting Ultron.
But as for villains of this movie, Leader, not cutting it for me. This is part of the problem with Marvel these days too. I don't remember the villains. I don't give a crap about the villains. I think they're boring. I think they're lacking motivation. I think their ambition is ridiculous. And Leader, for such a smart character, did not make sense to me. None of what he was doing made sense. The way that it all ended, the way that he gave himself up doesn't make sense. I guess they're setting up a sequel or something. We'll look forward to that in 17 years' time. Huge miss for me here.
One of the scriptwriters clearly had the whole Ross as a villain actually plot in mind, because you have this whole Stearns is betrayed by Ross, who promised him his freedom and things and used him to get into the White House. Again, you could connect that like Trump with Elon Musk, having this guy behind the scenes pulling strings and manipulating events in order to benefit him, but they didn't commit to it, and it's just, I used him to get into the White House and then I didn't set him free. It's like, yeah, that kind of makes you a bad guy in that sense, because you gave this guy false hope. But also, this guy shouldn't be out in public, because look at his messed up green head. But also, he's a supervillain that doesn't know what he's doing. So he's going to do more damage that way.
Accidentally? He's just accidentally going to do stuff. But Ross is a changed man, Craig.
He's trying to be.
He's a changed man. He likes his daughter or something.
One thing I didn't quite understand with the Leader's thing, well, one of many things, was the whole mind control thing. Could he do that to anybody? Or is it only people he's conditioned? They didn't really explain that.
I think he had to have done the whole light through the phone thing to them, and then that encoded the song somehow.
How do you explain the jets? I'm taking control of the jets.
They had already been exposed to the lights, I guess? Question mark? Question mark?
That question mark was loud.
Yeah.
That was a loud question mark.
Just some people he can mind control and some people he can't. and we don't know why.
That was my read as well, Kat. I assumed that a flash had happened sometime prior because they set it up with the Isaiah Bradley and the White House thing.
Yeah, just because the idea is, I guess, you just don't know who has already been under his influence. That's that, yeah.
Yeah, he's everywhere. He's all-encompassing. He can get anybody, except for Sam Wilson, who I think would be totally a good get. That doesn't service the plot, though.
No. You need him to be incorruptible. But we're okay with having Isaiah Bradley be a mind-controlled drone that shoots at the president, because the optics on that aren't terrible, are they?
Yeah.
That was actually one of the strongest moments in the film for me, was that arrest, where you didn't want them to ruin his suit. I think that was actually a very poignant moment. And like I said earlier, I felt like a lot of the individual scenes were fine. I just don't feel like it adds up to anything substantial when you put it all together.
I agree. I felt something about the whole suit comment, but I also was just like, come on now. We're in America. This black man just shot at the president. Are we seriously not shooting him on sight? Are American Secret Services and police not shooting that man on sight? They shot at the president.
Because that's exactly what they did in real life.
Yeah, they shot at the president as soon as he turned into the Red Hulk. So if someone shot at the president, presumably killing him, for all you know, you wouldn't shoot that black man? I say that as a very political term because black people are getting shot inordinately at crazy numbers in America by police. So I didn't buy that. That was a strong scene until I was just like, okay, I'm watching a Marvel movie for 10-year-olds now.
Yeah, until you had to think about it and until I had to inform another scene, and then that creates its own issues. And then you had the bit where Ross is supposedly a changed man. He knows that mind control is now a factor. He also knows what Stearns is capable of, but he's still happy to have Bradley rot in prison and be executed.
Yeah. Actually, I thought Lumley's performance was maybe the best performance of the movie. Little details, like for example, when he's in the prison and he's like, I can't do this anymore. My suit and this and that. And he's in the prison and he can't even make eye contact with Anthony Mackie's Sam Wilson. I actually felt something from Isaiah Bradley's character, which maybe makes me want to go watch the TV show. I thought he was good with what limited material he had.
He is good, yeah. He had that striking image of when he was in solitary and he had that one sliver of light that was getting let in and he was sitting in the middle of it to give him some sense of the outside world. It was this, I don't want to be back in here again. I think that some of the strongest stuff they do in the TV show is related to Isaiah Bradley, this forgotten Captain America that was betrayed by his own country.
Yeah, it's an interesting story.
And they could have set up some kind of a mirror through Sam in this movie. There's another movie it could have been. Sam Wilson is betrayed by the country that he embodies.
Look forward to that sequel in 28 years.
Like I said earlier, I feel like my concern is going to be that they'll just never do a Sam Wilson Captain America movie again. Or they'll get someone else to lead the Avengers.
Because of lost money.
Yeah, through no fault of Anthony Mackie.
Yeah, he's a good actor.
It's entirely the fault of the people that put this together and just hoped it would be good enough, and it just isn't, because they haven't learned the lesson of executive meddling doesn't make a better film. They just haven't learned that lesson yet.
Kat, I've got a question for you, because you said that you liked the TV show. Did they do Isaiah Bradley justice in this? Because one thing I have heard is that he has basically the same role that he had in the TV show.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. I don't like what they did with Isaiah in this film. There's no particular progress for his character. If anything, using him as a pawn like that, I suppose it's addressed within the narrative where it's like, really? That sucks for him. Come on, he's had a terrible life. But it's also a little bit underserving the character himself. Kind of what you said earlier. Oh, he's an old man. He can't use a phone. Therefore, the perfect victim or something. It just doesn't give him any really opportunity to flex any sort of muscles around who this guy is, how he's feeling, except for the system has been against me forever. And it still is against me. And there is an argument to be made that that's echoing the Black experience and that genuinely hasn't changed. And therefore, if the record seems broken, that's because it is. And again, it's watered down. It's the essence of an aroma of a plot or of a concept that's worth exploring. It's not done justice, as with a lot of things in this film. There's nuggets that are interesting, but the minute you try to sniff at them, they're not chicken. You know what I mean? We keep talking about food with regards to this movie, but that's because it's an easy metaphor to reach for when something is tasteless and empty calories and that sort of thing. Yeah, that's what this movie feels like. And the Isaiah subplot, I will agree with what people are saying, that his plot is basically the same and it's giving Sam the same thing to do because he's, oh no, we got to have justice for Isaiah, which sure, but is that it?
Yeah. Are we going to keep doing that over and over and over again for Sam, looking after the one black guy he knows?
They were never going to top what they did in the show, actually, because part of it was all the stuff that Isaiah did for his country was erased. So it's not in history books or anything. And what you have is Sam has it unerased. So he's suddenly recognized as being this Captain America during whatever era, the Cold War era that he was involved in. And he gets his identity back and he gets to be remembered as or recognized as a hero. And you're just not going to top that, I think, because that is a genuinely meaningful thing that Sam did for him. In this, he just gets out of prison, but he has no idea that he's not going to be thrown in prison again next week, especially because of the world we live in now.
Yeah.
So has anything really changed for him? And I actually felt it was out of character for him to go to the White House in the first place.
Yes. I sense that even without seeing the show.
I'm not going to go shake hands with the people that threw me in prison. And Sam's like, yeah, but just come along. We'll go in a limo and it'll be great. And, yeah, all right. I'll come along. It just doesn't ring true. But it's, as Aaron often talks about, the plot force. We need Isaiah in the White House so he can try and kill the president. Or pretend to try and kill the president. You have that thing in the video where he wasn't even aiming at him. It's obvious if you watch the video. Which again could have fed into a plot around the truth doesn't matter. We can manufacture the facts in any way we want. But it doesn't go there either. Doesn't do anything with any of this stuff.
Yeah, it's disappointing.
Should we talk about Ruth?
Ruth. Oh, God.
Oh boy, here we go.
Former Black Widow from Israel. We'll gloss over that. Well, we're not going to gloss over it, but the film does.
Yeah, exactly. My first thought immediately, first of all, I saw her and I was like, oh great, it's the girl from Unorthodox. So she's going to be Israeli. Cool.
I'm surprised they left that line in, actually. I'm surprised that made it into the film.
Yeah. There is the whole thing of Krav Maga being invented in Israel. And it's always, at least in media, because I don't have any direct experience, but it's always brought up as the martial art, more brutal than anything else.
Yeah, but Black Widows could just know that.
Suits them.
In current context, I'm like, yeah, of course, naturally. I will say, I think that girl was done dirty because she is a pretty good actor. And this character sucks. And I don't think that she's the right fit to play such an action-heavy character. And she comes across as having zero charisma, which is not true. If you see Unorthodox, which is a very interesting Netflix series about a woman who leaves the Hasidic community that she's a part of, she's great in that. And so to see her in this, it's like, man, I mean, get your money, but also wasted. Absolute wasted potential. And as far as the character goes, I don't like that there's this former Black Widow person who's this high up in the government and she has more authority than Sam, basically. Who are you? Who the hell are you and why are we listening to you? Was my feeling the whole time.
I can only assume that she was a victim of reshoots. They would have gone into the whole she's Sabra thing and gone, probably not a good idea right now. We're going to lose money.
Well, she even has the costume or an approximation of it.
In the movie that we saw.
In the movie, yeah, it's under her jacket at one point. She's just wearing her costume from the comics or something similar.
Okay, I didn't see that, but covering up that costume is an interesting choice. You mentioned at the start we're going to get a little bit political, so I will just say this. Shira Haas was a member of the IDF when she was younger. Now, I understand that Israeli citizens are conscripted into the IDF, so it's not always a choice of theirs as they become adults, but she was somebody that was medically exempt from being in the IDF, and she was so passionate to be part of the IDF that she chose to ignore the medical exemption and become part of the IDF.
Ooh.
So she's not someone that I have a great deal of respect for, and I will just make this point. If Disney hired a former member of Hamas to be in their movie, it would be blacklisted. It would never get made. They simply wouldn't do it because it would be like, well, that's a terrorist organization. We can't have a terrorist person in our movie. The outcry from the public would be insane. And I will say this, Hamas have done nothing illegal, absolutely nothing according to international law, but the IDF has. So that's where I'm just going to leave my little bit on Shira Haas's character. I think I've made my point.
Well, just from the point of view of Ruth as a character in this movie, the ex-widow thing is the thing they want you to focus on because they point it out a couple of times. And you do have this loose idea of second chances permeating throughout the film. Ross wants a second chance. Isaiah wants a second chance to exist and so on. And then you have her as a former Black Widow who's probably done some pretty awful stuff, getting a second chance to, I guess, be on the right side, which is basically Natasha's arc from prior films. That's what she was doing, the Red in My Ledger arc that she had.
Yeah.
And then the Black Widow movie absolved her of some of the terrible things she did. Oh yeah, you didn't kill this little girl that you thought you killed. Don't worry about it. She's now Taskmaster. So you don't have to feel bad about that. That hospital you burned down, there was no one in it. It's all right. It's no problem. So absolve her of that in that way, I guess. But you don't get any sense of what she did in her past and what she might have to make up for. It's just Ross likes her and puts her in charge of investigations and then ignores her when she says, I found this out. So she's a character that didn't really need to be there. In fact, you could have combined her with Sam's friend that you've also never seen before who works for Ross. Layla, her name is. I got that from the credits because I couldn't remember her name in the movie.
Who apparently is a significant character in comic books.
Yes.
So what are they doing?
I couldn't remember her name being uttered in the movie. That's how inconsequential she was. And then it was Sam's like, oh, don't worry, I've got a friend in the White House. And I was thinking, who's that? And then it's her. I've never seen her before. Okay. Turns out Sam just has all these. Well, he will have because he knows people.
I assume that she was in the show.
No, she's not.
Oh, God. Okay.
Unless she is, and I don't remember her. Although his, what we call him, sidekick, partner, understudy, Joaquin Torres, he was in the show. And you have this whole, oh, your old Falcon gear's busted. I'm going to fix it up and become the new Falcon. And then in this, he just is with one of the worst superhero costumes I've seen in recent memory.
Okay, that's prompting a thought. I'll get back to you on that one. What are the worst superhero costumes?
I don't know.
If they popped out Sabra's costume, I probably would have said that, just on principle.
But this one's up there. Just this ugly green thing. But at least he doesn't have a nanotech helmet like everybody else does. I'm sick of them. Sick of people's helmets just disappearing so you can see their face.
Yeah, I agree with that. I kind of nothing to Torres. I've heard a lot of people talking about how Danny Ramirez brought a lot of charisma to the role. Okay, he's innocent. I don't really care about him, but I didn't care about Torres at all.
Yeah, it's what you say. Oh, yeah, I didn't really care about him. And I really didn't care. He brings charisma, but at the same time, I'm just like, dude, shut up.
Yeah.
I never felt that way about Sam as a sidekick.
Yes.
To Steve, but I do feel that way about this guy. Oh my God, shut up. And maybe it's because he's a little more bro-y and a little more cheeky with it, whereas Sam is a very serious kind of guy. But yeah, I did not care for this guy at all.
I didn't believe him as competent as a soldier or anything,
yes,
because he was too jokey.
Yeah, that too, yeah.
If you were in a hierarchical military structure, you'd be told to shut up constantly because all you do is joke around and it's not great.
Yeah, people's lives are at stake here.
Like you say, they used to have these camaraderie partnerships that weren't obnoxious, but this felt obnoxious. So it made the serious moments harder to digest as well because they were so inconsistent with just how good he was at what he did.
Yeah, Sam and Steve had jokes. They had banter. They definitely joked around, but not on mission. And if they ever did joke around on mission, it was silly Marvel writing that undercut the tension, which I wouldn't have liked. And I certainly don't like it here because this guy is nothing but jokes. Apart from when he's in the hospital, I guess.
There's actually one really good during action sequence joke I can remember from Winter Soldier. It's after Sam saves Steve when he jumps off the helicarrier and takes him back onto the helicarrier. And he says, you're heavier than you look. And Steve says, I had a big breakfast. And it's like a callback to the fact that Sam made him breakfast earlier in the movie. It's just a little funny line. It's not overblown in any way. Whereas in this, I feel like some of it is, look, we're being funny now. We're being funny now. Laugh, laugh. No, I'm not laughing. It's not funny.
Yeah, I didn't give a crap at all that he was injured, that he was hurt during that battle. And I guess the key to those sort of dogfights in the sky and everything, which looks fine, I guess, is that you're meant to care. You're meant to care about these people. He was shot down. I didn't care. Didn't care at all. Didn't bother me.
The dogfight was the best sequence in the movie, and it's what you do when your Captain America can fly. You have a dogfight in your movie.
Yeah, technically it was fine. I just didn't care about it.
Kat, maybe you'll be able to weigh in a bit more because you were on the Falcon Winter Soldier episode, but do you remember Torres that much from the show? Because all I remember, he's in a couple of episodes and then disappears and then comes back at the end.
Yeah, I have to say that when the film started and he was a big thing, it was like, am I supposed to remember this guy? I'll say he was not a very impressive part of the show. I didn't particularly care for him. That's the thing. He's a side character in a TV show, not a sidekick in a Captain America movie. There's a difference. And that's the thing. This whole thing is a glorified TV movie, except I watched it in IMAX for some reason. But I also watched the first 2 episodes of The Inhumans in IMAX for some reason. So I am that person. So that's fine, I guess.
When we were deluded into believing it's going to be like watching a Marvel movie, but it's the pilot of a TV show, and it's not like watching a Marvel movie at all. Well, I suppose it is now, actually. Probably in line with the quality of production on this movie. Although, like I said, I think the dogfight sequence looked very good. I think they put a lot of time and effort into that one, and I think it paid off, as opposed to some of the other stuff.
Yeah, technically it holds up fine. It looks good in terms of action directing. I thought the cutting was nice. Some of the shots were good. Don't get me wrong, it was fine. It was a lot better than the action scene at the end of the film, I thought, particularly with that weird green screen at the cherry blossoms. What the heck was going on there? This is a $400 movie, a $400 million movie. It looked like a $400 movie. And again, I didn't care a lot by the end of the movie. It looked like crap. I don't know if people think Red Hulk looked good, but I don't care much about CGI things anyway. And then the whole thing about, I want to bring him to the cherry blossom so we can talk him down. Damn it, that's not going to work. Now he's beating the crap out of me. What if I just try talking to him again? Oh, it worked this time. Okay, no worries. Oh, God. That's a diabolical ending to a movie for me.
It's almost like Thor's Thanos. Well, it's not a joke, but it's what he says about Thanos. It's like, well, he's never fought me. Yeah, he has. Well, he's never fought me twice. I didn't try to speak to him twice. That was where I'd had the problem. And the Red Hulk render, I thought the character model was very good, which makes that sequence look worse, actually, because you have this really good character model and then this cardboard background, and it just really stands out.
Ugly. Cherry blossoms are some of the most beautiful trees on the planet. I've seen them firsthand in Japan. They're amazing to look at. And that just looks terrible. It looks so bad.
Yeah, although I think in terms of the mechanics of the fight, I think they, at least to begin with, made good use of the fact that Sam is no match for a Hulk. So his tactic is to run away and get him away from the people he might hurt.
Yeah, that's all well and good. And the idea of bringing him to the Japanese cherry blossoms to obviously thematically tie in the whole Japan-America conflict. And also the daughter and him used to like the cherry blossoms together, so that will hopefully calm him down. All that made sense thematically, but the execution is not up to par for me. And whatever I liked about the movie to that point, which wasn't a great deal, as per this episode, was even further taken away by a bad ending. I did not like the ending at all.
Kat, do you have any thoughts on the action sequences that we had, those two specifically, or any of the other ones?
I do think that a lot of the action stuff was probably the anchor points. The dogfight at the Celestial Island is the scene that looks the best. And therefore, that was there the whole time. But the Sidewinder stuff does not look great. And that makes me think that it might have been reshoots / late additions to just kind of bulk up the subplots. Because let's face it, the Sidewinder storyline was wasted in this whole thing. Every time there was another action piece, I was like, okay, sure. It's a Marvel movie, I guess. We have to have this. We have to have a gunfight or whatever. The Celestial Island stuff was the most interesting to me as an Eternals fan. I was just like, I'm just here for this, man.
Surfing on missiles and stuff. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool imagery.
That was pretty cool. Genuinely, I do think that was the only stuff that was there initially. And then everything else. And then, yeah, as you say, Bo, the cherry blossom scenes at the very end, all of that, I think, was a late addition. The VFX is horrendous. When Sam tries to talk to Red Hulk and reason with him, the green screen looked so obvious that I genuinely turned around to my husband to be like, what? They allowed this?
You double watted, not just one watt, you twice watted. What?
Yeah.
What? Oh, that's bad.
So bad. So bad. The thing is, you can have action sequences that give the film oomph, but when it's, I guess they want explodey cars, let's explode some cars. At this stage, it all feels so contrived that I can see the artifice. I can see them in the conference room talking about what they should be doing to entice more 12-year-old boys, or 10-year-olds, I guess, since we've been making that point. It's just not so compelling anymore than it has been historically. I can't say that the action sequences brought up a lot of feelings, whichever way, unfortunately.
And Bo, you mentioned earlier about how the plot beats were at least superficially similar to Winter Soldier, and I felt like that with the action sequence as well. It starts off with Captain America in the middle of something, trying to retrieve something like it does in Winter Soldier. Even when he's in the car and gets attacked, that's like that scene where Nick Fury gets attacked in his car, and so on.
Yeah, Sidewinder, yeah.
So there's a bit of, I'm not going to say plagiarism.
Deja vu for me. Kind of end up being like, I feel like I've been here before. Brave, it's not new. Also not really. I don't get the Brave New World part of this.
That was just a title change to avoid direct Nazi imagery.
What was the previous one?
New World Order.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And then at some point they were like, we shouldn't title our movie this. And so they changed it and we moved on.
Unless it was going to be about a fascistic president trying to lean the country back into fascism, then it would have been a very appropriate title.
Yeah, I don't think they would make that movie right now.
Or ever, perhaps.
Perhaps.
Which is, again, part of the problem. And in terms of the whole world side of it, that was a point that I made in my review, the idea that there is no sense that there's a world outside the characters in this film. You get no real public reaction to anything. You get the news reports, but you don't get a sense of how any of these events are being received by just people. And again, this is a point that Aaron makes. You get to a point where just everybody has superpowers, so therefore there's no normal people anymore, and then you're less able to connect to it for that reason. And I'm not saying the MCU was always great at this, but you did get a sense of there is a public out there that think about these things. Civil War starts off with that. Here's this guy that was filming it that got crushed by the debris falling from the flying island. Here's someone the Hulk accidentally killed when he smashed into a building. All that consequence, I suppose. And it's like I said, I don't feel like there was any real consequences to any of this, because I don't know what anybody thinks about anything. What do the public think of the way Ross is as a president? Why was he elected in the first place? His platform is vaguely together. We're going to do this together.
We're going to do this together.
Which is, like you said, is this idea of we need to understand each other and support each other and all this. All his campaign literature was blue, so I guess that tells you a lot about his affiliation party-wise.
But he's the Red Hulk.
Yeah. And I think perhaps the best line in the film is on that theme, or that very loose theme, where Sam says, if we can't see the good in each other, then we've already lost the fight. That's a good line. And it's after Ross has supposedly taken responsibility for everything. But again, you hear about that after the fact. You don't see him take responsibility. It's just he's in prison, he's already done it. What does that look like? Would it not be worth seeing him announce this to the public?
And he's still president. I guess it's probably not the first time we've had a felon in the office. Anyway, I agree with everything you said. I've got no notes on that.
In terms of the action, I thought it was fine. The opening was okay. I didn't understand why, when they went to investigate what turned out to be Stearns, I didn't understand why Sam wasn't wearing his costume. He just went in plain clothes and had his shield. But you have that bit where he opens the cupboard and his costume's in there, and then he just doesn't take it. Doesn't make any sense. Take the invincible costume, Sam.
Yeah, you are a huge asset to your country and to the world. Please don't die from a random stray bullet. And you live in America. It's going to happen. It could be a random event. Trying to apply real world logic to these movies is hilarious. You spoke about the newsreels. Those newsreels, if we had one about Donald Trump, it would be like, so the president, Donald Trump, who you might remember, and you definitely do remember, was the president between 2016 and 2020. And he was a former businessman, and he had a cameo in Home Alone 2. If you do that every single time you watch the news, people will stop watching the news, and they probably should. That sort of stuff, the info dumping at the start of these movies, you can't apply real world logic to them. You kind of need them for people like me who didn't watch Incredible Hulk or didn't watch Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So I do need those big info dumps at the start. But you can't apply real-world logic to them. They fall apart pretty quickly under scrutiny.
You maybe need it to be delivered a bit more organically than a glorified previously on, though.
Yes, I agree. And that's where that finesse comes in. This film just has a startling lack of finesse.
I teased this earlier, but I did look up the whole MCU president line of succession and found some interesting things. It all seems to be about the same up until Obama. So you get Obama, his first term. And then for some reason, Obama loses and you get, I can't even remember his name, Ellis, I think? I didn't even put that in my notes. The guy played by William Sadler. He was in Iron Man 3 and a couple episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as well.
So I'm following. Was Obama the president in the MCU?
Yes, but he only had one term because he lost to Ellis, who was in office during the events of Iron Man 3.
Okay.
And then, and some of these sources are dubious in their canonicity, but Trump is mentioned during Luke Cage as being president. So after Ellis, you get Trump.
Well, do you? Because I don't think that, and this is a point of contention, and I don't know that I agree with it, but whatever. The originally Netflix Defenders verse is not 616 canon.
It's all canon now, apparently, as they've said.
Is it, though?
Well, I would disagree.
Because they were saying that it isn't, and that the new Daredevil retcons things. If it doesn't, better, because I don't like when something that I consider canon is taken out for no reason at all. Looking at you, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
But that's part of the problem as well, the fact that they just don't seem to care. about their continuity anymore. So it's,
Yeah,
the Netflix shows, they've always been canon. Yeah, but they can't because The Punisher season 2 is set during the blip and half the world isn't missing. So what are you going to do about that? Ignore it. Like, we ignore everything else. But if you go by the canonicity of this, then you have a Trump term after Ellis, and then you have the blip. Don't know who was president during that, but now you have Ross. I just thought it was an interesting thing to play with. Trump was president in this universe, but only once. Or maybe he stayed in office during the blip. I don't know.
So did Ross beat Trump according to that timeline?
Well, it's difficult because you have 5 years, remember, where everything goes to pot.
I like the idea of Trump being dust. That's something that's maybe tricky to put on a public podcast.
Maybe he was, and maybe he wasn't. We don't know. We don't even know if he was canonically president.
He might have been dusted, yeah. Okay, I'm not sure. And the first Avenger, did they have Roosevelt? Was it FDR for World War II? I think it was.
There's reference to the president in the first Avenger, yeah. So my assumption is that it's all the same up until Obama's first term.
This slightly speaks to a point that I have. These movies don't stand up to any real scrutiny.
They used to.
The good Marvel movies stand up better, for sure, prior to Endgame, including Endgame. They stand up better, for sure, no question. But at the end of the day, the target audience for these movies, it feels like teenagers. It feels like they're aiming this towards teenagers because it doesn't stand up to any actual adult scrutiny. Is that a fair comment?
I would say so.
I would say since Endgame, yeah, because they seem to have given up on keeping things consistent.
Yeah, and Kat, you said you liked Eternals. Eternals was directed by Chloe Zhao. That's something that should stand up to scrutiny, and I liked it a lot less than you did. Craig, you've liked a bunch of MCU movies. I've liked one since Endgame, but it just feels like they're targeted towards teenagers. I mentioned earlier it's a movie for 10-year-old boys. It feels like the kind of movie that 10-year-old boys might like. But does that give it a pass for you guys? Are you able to sit there and be like, you know what, whatever, it's fine because 10-year-olds would like it, so that's fine?
No, because here's a point I make very often. Long-time listeners of this podcast will hear me make this point constantly. I've spoken to a lot of people that have written for children's animation. So they write for kids around that age, 10 to 12 years old. And they consistently talk about how if you talk down to them, then you'll lose the audience. If you assume that they're stupid, you'll lose the audience. So if they are aiming these at 10 to 12-year-olds, then they're probably going to lose that audience because they might have some sense of wanting to care about what they're watching. And then what they're making doesn't respect the audience enough. I talked about how they're not rewarding my investment anymore. Because it used to be, I'm going to come back and watch Civil War and see what they've been up to since I last saw these characters. And then you could see where the through line was. And to an extent, you can see that here through the TV show into this, as in Sam became Captain America and is still Captain America. I can understand that through line. But in terms of the broader context of everything that they've been doing, I just feel like that every show and movie could effectively exist in its own universe at this point, because there's very little crossover or build-up. And it used to be that the film you're watching would end with a post-credit scene that would try and hype you for the next one. And there'd be a sense of a plan of, here's what we're going to be doing next. But they don't do that here. In fact, the post-credit scene is just confusing.
Yeah. To my point about whether it gets a pass or not, I agree with you that kids deserve better, basically. And I think good kids movies, think of Studio Ghibli and stuff like that, they don't treat kids like idiots. Kat, I just wondered, I don't know what your situation is. Do you have kids in your life, nieces, nephews, kids, whatever? Do you have any read on whether young people are liking this movie? Or
so when I went to see it, this was in Greece, and I think the audience was largely 20s. There were no children in my screening, so I don't know is the answer directly for this one. In my life, I don't have anyone in that age bracket. Any children that are in my general periphery are younger, and I don't know that they're into any of this at all whatsoever. So I do think that it's that weird, we're trying to catch everybody who's been watching all of our 30 movies plus 15 20 TV shows, all of this stuff, reads the comic books, and we're trying to make it so they can take their 12-year-olds and have fun. But the thing is, and I was going to say, oh, it's a tough balance to strike. No, it isn't. We have had good movies. So the endeavor in itself is not that difficult.
Used to do this routinely, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's just that the execution is garbage. And it's a symptom of a larger problem that Hollywood has at the moment, and it has had for a few years now, but in particular right now with all of these kind of blockbusters, is that everyone's trying to find the deadest horse to beat. And the rest of us are Millhouse, and we're like, please stop. He's already dead. You can't please everybody. And I think that studios like Marvel and Disney have forgotten that that's true, because you can't. By trying to make something that's so placating to all sides, we're going to make this sequel to what was probably the most political Marvel movie ever. And the president and the military and the international community feature in this quite heavily, but it's not political. Don't worry about it. We have this Israeli Black Widow, but it's not political. Don't worry about it. So what are you saying? You're saying nothing. And so, yeah, I can't imagine kids being like, yeah, let's go watch this. What young kids know what Red Hulk is? It's also in the marketing of this movie, right? All of the posters and the trailers and all of this stuff. Oh, wow, look, they have a Red Hulk. Who cares, actually? Because I don't, in itself, just this being the thing is not telling me anything compelling about this movie. I'm only watching this because I've watched all of your other garbage. It's the sunk cost fallacy of I'm in this now, so I guess I'll pay my €8 and go to see this movie. By the way, €8 IMAX tickets in Greece. Amazing.
That's unreal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Worth the travel alone.
I couldn't believe it. I was booking the tickets and I was like, are you for real?
Have I picked the wrong screen?
It gave me the total was 16 and I was like, oh, 16 each. I guess if you convert it to pounds, it's like 10, 12. That's fine. And then it was like, no, that's your transaction total. And I'm like, ooh, we rolling in it.
Am I rich here?
Yeah. Generally speaking, Greece isn't stupidly cheap, but it is cheaper than the UK. And so, yeah, sometimes when I go home, I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I'll pay you money. That's fine. So the sunk cost situation for a lot of us is undeniable. And I know that they're banking on it. And the thing is, at some point, and I think that some point is coming soon, something's going to give, folks. And people will just stop. And maybe this is the line. I don't know.
Yeah, I think people are already getting off that train, Kat. And I love what you say about when you try and make a movie that's... Because, like, who is this movie for? Is it for 10-year-olds? No, it's not. Is it for people that are adult? Not really. Is it for comic book fans? Probably not. It's not super faithful, is my understanding. Is it for fans of Falcon and the Winter Soldier? Maybe, but not really, because you're doing the same arcs anyway, according to you guys. Okay, is it for Republicans and conservatives? Nope. They'll consider it a DEI woke factory. Is it for leftists like me? Nope. Because they're going to look at that and be like, we don't trust the president.
It's too right wing. Yeah.
Yeah. So who is this movie for? And in trying to make a movie that's palatable for everybody at some level, you end up making a movie that's palatable for nobody. And that's where we are.
And the thing is, these movies used to have things to say, comparison being Winter Soldier. The overriding message in that one is the surveillance state is really bad and we should get rid of it.
Yeah. How true has that become? Holy heck.
It managed to be an entertaining action movie with good characters that was about something. And other Marvel movies have done the same thing.
Sick trailer too. Probably Marvel's best trailer, I thought, was Winter Soldier. I loved that trailer. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's a sidebar, but no, they used to be much better at this.
Yeah, and it's just weird to think what changed. And then it's going to make me sound like I'm an abused spouse making excuses here, but Thunderbolts is the first movie that has been developed from scratch since the pandemic. So everything they've released beforehand has been mired in these troubled times that we once had. So there is a sliver of hope that Thunderbolts might be a cohesive project from script to screen, so to speak. And again, yeah, I can hear myself saying this.
They can change. They can change.
There is hope.
They're taking your money, Craig.
It was just a bad night. They're not going to treat me like that again.
Oh, God.
We're going to get back to rewarding me for watching these things.
Financial abuse is domestic violence, Craig. They're financially abusing you.
And then I remember that we're going to have Doomsday and Secret Wars with no build-up as well. So who knows?
Oh, there's build-up. There's build-up because in the end credit sequence, Lita says, something's coming, or something to that effect.
Whatever. It's inconsequential. It was just a thing to stick at the end so that they can have an end credit scene. It means nothing to me.
Yeah, agreed.
The words that he was saying didn't make any sense because he was saying, do you think you're the only world? Well, no, because we've had alien invasions.
There's a multiverse. We know that there's a multiverse. Thanks.
We're well familiar, yes.
Even if Sam doesn't know, all he said was other worlds, so you could take that to mean alien worlds. Yeah, there has been more than one alien invasion. We're aware of this. Will they invade again? Probably.
Which makes me think it's made for 10-year-olds, in a sense. Maybe the 10-year-old doesn't remember that stuff.
That might be the intent, but even if you're talking down to that audience, then you're not going to get anywhere.
And they're not sitting through the credits.
One question I did have, actually, that I did want to see addressed in some way, because it is brought up in the film where Sam mulls over whether he should have taken the super soldier serum and had super strength like Steve and like Bucky and like Isaiah. Do you think he should have? Kat, what do you think? Do you think Sam should have superpowers? He can talk to birds in the comics. He can't do that here.
Oh, that's cute. Oh, yeah. By the way, Red Wing steals every scene it's in.
He has more than one. It's not special anymore.
I know, but every time that he'd be like, Red Wing, I need to cover. And the little thing would go, yeah, okay. You know, and it's like, oh, I'm here for you.
See, in the comics, he had a real Falcon called Red Wing that he spoke to.
Oh. Should Sam have superpowers? Probably no, because it's part of what makes him the everyman Captain America, today's everyman.
With his invincible suits.
Yes, but as a character, as a person. At the same time, if he had super strength, I don't know that would change his personality. So sure, what I want to see reflected in Sam, but also I would like to see him move past this being the big thing. He always has to prove himself. And he was desperately trying to prove himself in this film, definitely. Constantly, oh, you're not Steve Rogers. Yes, I know, we get it. Look at me. I'm aware. And never being taken seriously. And so what I would love to see for Sam is moving past this as an obstacle. He's the black man. He's never taken seriously. He's not Steve Rogers. He doesn't have superpowers. Okay, I thought that's what the show was about. And now this is also the same. Maybe having superpowers might help him move past that obstacle and give him further story. They just couldn't find a conflict for him in this movie, and so they gave him some retreaded old stuff and a Hulk movie. I think they were stuck with what to do with Sam, and maybe the superpower would have been an option. I don't know. One
thing that I thought about while I was watching the movie is when he's chucking the shield about and catching it, I was thinking, without superpowers, there's no way you're doing that. There's no way you would have the necessary strength to get that kind of momentum. And I know that comic book stuff is messed up in that way all the time anyway, but I just found myself less able to buy into it when that was happening. Catching this would rip your arm out of its socket because you just don't have the necessary strength. And I don't think it would change his character too much to give him superpowers as such. And like you say, he needs to find his own thing. And I also wasn't buying into when he was saying to Torres, I can't afford to make mistakes. I've seen you in a lot of these movies and you've made a few mistakes. Remember when Ant-Man beat you? Remember when that happened? Yeah, that was a mistake. Made a few of those there. Or when Bucky tore you apart in like 3 seconds in the Winter Soldier movie, ripping your wing off and stuff like that. So it's weird that they've lent into this notion of Captain America being this infallible symbol. And Sam is plenty fallible. And Steve had his failings as well. He's not Superman, right? No, I don't think that Captain America is infallible. I think he's meant to represent what America should be. He's meant to be the ideal of America. And in the 40s / whenever he gets unfrozen, in fact, I would say when he gets unfrozen, Steve's ideals have to shift. He starts from a place of we trust the government and we are all in this together and all of that. And then when he sees what the government has become, he rebels because the ideal America is freedom. It's not oppression like this. And so Sam's version of that is the all-encompassing, the Americans of color, the people who are everyday working folks who are struggling. It's the veterans who come back from war. And it's the ideal of community care and togetherness that would be great, except we're at the polar opposite of that right now. That's what I think Sam is. But I don't think Disney has the cojones to make that movie or to tell that story. Maybe Marvel does in the comics, ? Sometimes. But as far as these movies that are for everybody and nobody, they wouldn't. So what's the point?
That's where I land.
Yeah, and you have in the comics and to an extent in the movies as well. Well, in the first Avengers movie, they reckoned with the fact that Captain America might be a little bit outdated, but he still stands for how he thinks America should be rather than what it actually is. And to him, the symbol means something. And then you could even have a bit of the American dream in there, the idea you can arrive with nothing and rise to the top of the pile, so to speak. It's the idea that Sam, in theory, comes from humble beginnings and then is Captain America one day. We don't know anything about his beginnings, really. We know a little bit about his family life from the show, but there's not much of his background in there. So it's just not really saying anything about him. But I thought the debate about the super soldier serum was interesting in that they didn't address it, because I think it should have been a serious consideration. And you had Bucky say, Steve represented an ideal or whatever, and you represent something that people can aspire to.
Hope. Yeah.
Okay, that's okay. And I get what you're trying to say there, but also you should have said that without saying it.
Yeah. It also comes off hollow coming from him after we find out that his scriptwriters wrote it. I tend to agree largely with what Kat's saying, is that my instinct is to say no. I actually think the character is stronger without the serum. Not literally stronger, but a stronger idea or a stronger, more compelling character. But I don't trust Disney/Marvel to deliver on that promise, because the only thing that I think is super thematically interesting about Sam Wilson as Captain America is his race and his lack of serum. They don't seem interested in exploring his race and what that means in America right now. So what we're left with is exploring the fact that he's not a super soldier. And I think that can be compelling. Whether or not it is another matter. I like this idea that you have a black man that is just capable, and he is fallible, and he is human, and he can die. And I like that idea that he can still become Captain America. I don't like the idea of giving him a serum, because then it gives him an excuse. I think about Donald Glover. I don't know if it was a quote by him or about him. I think it was about him by somebody else. And they were like, look at how talented he has to be moderately famous. He has to be a singer, a rapper, an actor, a director, a writer, a comedian, a multi-instrumentalist musician to be noticed. Donald Glover. And he has become fairly famous. That's, as a black man and a Nepo baby, that's how much he needed to be good at to get to his level. White people have amazing privilege in this world. Let's explore that. Let's explore how a black man has become Captain America without the serum. Let's explore that idea. I just don't have confidence that Disney will. But I think it makes him a far more compelling character if he stays away from the serum. Far more. Without question. I just think it won't make much difference in Disney because he seems like he's a superpowered person anyway.
Well, he has, like I said, the invincible suits. So he's invulnerable when he's in a fight. As long as no one shoots him in the face, he'll be fine. Or a Hulk doesn't tear him apart, I guess. So it becomes a non-thing. And then the fact that they brought it up and then abandoned it means that in some version of the script, someone was interested in glancing at that question, but either it was removed or they weren't that interested in it in the first place. It's difficult to figure out where the 5 writers are coming from here, because it does feel like they're all writing different movies.
Yeah, agreed.
So do we have anything else that we want to bring up? I was going to bring up where we're going next with the MCU, but we've kind of done that with Thunderbolts, which will be similar to this in that there'll be some political stuff that they ignore maybe, or maybe they won't. Maybe this is the one where they're back on track, guys. This is the one. This is the time. Honestly.
When's that releasing?
It's in May.
Oh, just in time for the Cannes Film Festival. Interesting.
You'll love this quote, though. Florence Pugh, when she was being interviewed for Empire, was asked about Thunderbolts, and she described it as an indie, A24 feeling assassin movie with Marvel superheroes.
Oh,
honey.
Okay. Are you seriously going to let me not swear after that?
Did you see the latest teaser as well, where they labelled it Absolute Cinema and they gave it the from the cinematographer or whatever? I've got a picture of it somewhere that I can read because it's very funny.
Oh, goodness.
From the stars of Midsommar, A Different Man and You Hurt My Feelings, writers and director of Beef, cinematographer of The Green Knight, production designer of Hereditary, editor of Minari, composers of EEAAO, comes Thunderbolts *, in cinemas May 2nd.
I suppose there are a lot of indie people involved, which maybe bodes well.
Will they be allowed to do what they do best, though?
We'll see. I mean, I will say I saw the trailer and then, because my husband's a little more familiar with the comics, watched a couple of videos breaking down some of the characters that turn up. And so I kind of have a sense of where it's going to go plot-wise. And it's interesting. I can't say that I care about all of the Thunderbolts equally.
Most of them were in Black Widow. Isaac pointed that out and I hadn't realised it, actually. But most of them are Black Widow continuation.
Yeah. Can you believe that Black Widow is required viewing now?
I wouldn't go that far.
I suppose you can watch this without really knowing who these people are, but that's their origin story. And Hawkeye, I guess, for Yelena, if you want to be a completist. God, where are we?
Yeah, and Falcon and Winter Soldier for John.
Of course. And for Bucky.
Who's John?
US agent.
He's Kurt Russell's son. He gets appointed as Captain America in the Falcon and Winter Soldier show.
And then he decapitates somebody with the Captain America shield. So he's not a good.
Yeah, it's one of the darkest things Marvel's ever done, actually, that scene.
Yeah, that scene is horrific and great.
And then he turns out to be not that bad by the end.
Well, I mean, he's not great.
He's not terrible either. He's somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I didn't realize that he was US agent. I knew that he was meant to be the new Captain America. That was the whole thing, right? So we've got Red Guardian, Yelena, Bucky, US agent, Taskmaster.
Yep. Who will probably die in the second scene or something.
Is that Ghost as well?
Yes, from Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Oh, God, okay. Are you guys hopeful that this is going to be good?
Well, like I said, this is the one where it's going to be back on track, they promised.
Hopeful is a big word. I'm open to it.
It's getting a Cannes release, right?
Is it actually? I thought you were joking.
No, definitely not. The film that has Century in it is not going to be a Cannes Film Festival.
Did they not show Indiana Jones at Cannes?
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
And everybody hated it because it's the wrong audience to put that in front of. Also, it's not that good.
Yeah, they still gave it a 23-minute standing ovation, though, or something. I looked into going to Cannes. It cost something like 4,000 euros.
Yeah.
Is that just to be press?
No, it's like 1,000 for press, and that's a digital pass.
Okay. Oh, great.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
You could apply for press, and then you just have accommodation to pay for and your flights and stuff. So you can see Thunderbolts a bit early, of course.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to the most.
Thunderbolts asterisk. Sorry, that was the actual title of the movie. The asterisk is probably important. You have Fantastic Four after that, which could be a fun novelty, although I think it's going to be quote-unquote important for the subsequent stories that they want to tell. Because that's where you're going to see Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom, probably, for the first time.
Which I don't love. So you guys are still on the train? There's enough coming up here that you guys want to see?
I mean, I went to see Kraven the Hunter. My standards are pretty low when it comes to what will get me in the cinema.
I did not stoop that low, I have to admit.
Me either. Not even Matty Z wanted to see that one, Craig. Come on.
I slept through quite a lot of it because I wasn't well, but I was in the cinema.
Yeah, good excuse.
I am still reluctantly on the train. There's enough I'm rewatching Daredevil at the moment in preparation for Born Again.
The show that started last week.
Yes, and I'm not up to date, and that's fine. I'm behind on my rewatch because there's so much to rewatch.
What, 39 episodes, plus if you want to watch Defenders, 46, 45.
Well, we watched Jessica Jones as well because I wanted to rewatch that.
Oh, right, okay, you're watching everything.
Yeah, and we might do Punisher anyway. We'll see. But there's enough stuff that I have loved over the years, and some of it comes up and surprises you. I didn't know what to expect of Loki, but it ended up being the perfect and most cathartic character arc for him. They fixed all of the stuff that I hated that they did to him in the main MCU timeline, and the show gave him character growth and also spectacular production design. So for things like that, for the occasional surprise, I'm still on it, god damn it.
They're still capable of making a Hawkeye quality level.
They are, and Hawkeye's perfectly serviceable. I can't say that it rocked my world.
Oh, I love that show.
Great for you, I'm very happy.
I never shut up about wanting Kate Bishop back. I want to see that character again.
Yeah, weren't we getting some kind of Young Avengers thing with her and other people?
By the time they do that, they'll be middle-aged.
They won't be young, yeah, exactly.
They're not young now.
There's that Riri Williams Ironheart thing. So she's meant to be the new Iron Man or whatever, Iron Woman. And Kate Bishop and all these people, and they're not getting any younger. So your production timeline needs to shift.
Yeah, it's like I said, they tease these things and tease these characters and we never see them again. And one thing I was wondering about this movie is, where the hell is Rhodey? It feels like that's the kind of thing he'd be in the middle of. He was a Skrull, I don't know.
They can't afford him, babe. We had a whole conversation about that. I don't know that they can afford Don Cheadle when he's not on contract.
Yeah, and they've just cancelled his movie.
Yeah, I mean, nobody actually wanted that.
But this is the kind of event he should be in the middle of because it's all military focused.
Yeah.
The president's there, and he clearly has some role within that anyway, because you see that in the first episode of Falcon and Winter Soldier, where he appears. Where he's a Skrull at that point, probably? I don't know. Let's ignore Secret Invasion ever happened. I think we're better off if we pretend that show never happened. A lot of things suddenly make sense again.
Done. I'll forget it never happened. That'll be hard for me, but I'll do it.
This thing you're never going to watch. No one can force you, so you're not going to.
Exactly.
So Thunderbolts asterisk, we'll be back in a couple of months talking about that. Some configuration of this team on this podcast, we'll be talking about that in a couple of months, and you might get to hear me just get progressively more defeated as the year goes on.
Mayhaps.
As disappointment after disappointment abounds. I'm done. When's the next one out?
I volunteer as tribute to be here to facilitate that downfall.
It's like when I was still watching The Flash, even though it was unwatchable. And people were asking me, why are you still doing this? And I kept saying, I don't know. I really don't know. But I did it. I was there until the end.
Well, I'm very proud of you, Craig. Well done.
Congratulations. You've wasted 9 years of your life watching this show.
God, that's bleak. That's so bleak.
It's good time after bad, isn't it? I can't give up now because I've given so much time already. I have to keep doing it.
You need to give up on these things.
Eventually.
That's how people get stuck in unrewarding relationships or toxic relationships. They just sit there and go, well, we've been together for 20 years, so may as well make it 50. No! Reclaim the 30 that you can have. Take it back. Anyway, that's relationship counseling with Bo.
There we go. So any last points that you wanted to get in before we wrap up? I covered most of my notes, and I feel like if I complain anymore, I'll explode. So I don't know if I should say much else. So, Kat, did you have anything that we didn't get to?
No, I don't think so.
Fantastic. And Bo, anything?
Likewise, all good.
Amazing. We covered everything. We've nailed it. That's it. No one ever needs to think about this film ever again. After you've listened to this podcast, forget it ever existed.
I will forget about this. Yes, that's a promise and a guarantee.
Do we officially rise against then, I suppose?
Yes.
I would say so, yeah.
It's a shame.
It is a shame.
Poor Anthony Mackie. You deserve better.
Truly.
I guess I'll leave myself on that note. Give him better stuff, Marvel.
Yeah.
Because he deserves it. He's been there for you the whole time.
Give us better stuff. We deserve it. We've been there the whole time.
I've been there through the difficult years when you were making Ben Affleck's Daredevil and stuff. I know that wasn't Marvel, it was Fox, but you get the idea.
Yeah, you've been there plenty long. Yeah.
Anyway, that was our discussion about Captain America Brave New World. I would like to thank Neil Stenson for the supplied music. If you like what you heard here, please do hit subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts. You'll be able to subscribe, and usually there's a way to rate and review the podcast on any of these platforms. So, Bo, I'll pick on you. How many stars should they give us?
Can they give 6?
I was going to go with 50 for the amount of stars on the American flag, but 6 works too.
America.
Or 51 maybe by the time you're listening to this, who knows?
Oh, good call out to the crazy stuff that's happening in Washington, D.C.
Welcome to the United States, Canada.
Yeah, all in one state too. That's bizarre. Surely they'd break it up into multiple states.
Getting too political, Bo. Rein it in. We're losing listeners.
Sorry. 5 stars. 5 stars, please. 5 stars. And share the love. Click on my Linktree and go and give those 5 stars as well, please.
Yeah, in the show notes. And Kat, do you think they should leave us a comment while they're at it? Let us know what they think of this movie.
I mean, I would love to hear what they think, and I would particularly love to hear from anybody who aggressively loved this movie. Are you the one super fan of this film the way I am the one super fan of the Eternals? Let's talk. I'd love to hear from you. Please.
In the Discord.
The closest we might get is Violet. And if you want to speak to us about this movie or anything Marvel or anything else really, you can hit us up on Facebook. I'm not going to pimp the Musky Place or Blue Sky under Kneel Before Blog, or you can leave a comment under kneelbeforeblog.co.uk. You can also join us on Discord, where we have an engaged community of a listener, which is more of a public than this movie promotes.
Ayo.
Hey!
You can catch us on there and join the conversation. For more deep dive conversations like this, the odd interview, or a monthly news podcast, you can continue to join us on Kneel Before Pod.